I never thought the person who would try to end my life would be the child I carried for 9 months. I am 72 years old now, and tonight, before God calls me home, I must tell the truth, because what happened in my family was buried for 40 years, and it's darker than anything you can imagine. This story begins on the night my son locked the door and smiled. I never imagined that the person who would look me in the eyes and decide I should die would be the child I once rocked to sleep. I am an old woman now. My hands shake when I hold this cup of tea, but my memory is sharp. Pain has a way of sharpening it. Tonight, before my voice disappears forever, I must tell the truth. Because what happened in my family was hidden for decades. And it all began the night my son locked the door and smiled. I grew up believing that family was safety. I married young, built a quiet life, and raised my only child in a town where people trusted smiles more than facts. My husband, Thomas, was admired by everyone church member. Steady job, calm voice. People called him a good man. The most dangerous lies are the ones everyone agrees to believe. Our son, Michael, was gentle as a boy. He loved books, hated loud noises, and used to hold my hand even when other boys his age pulled away. I thought I knew him. I was wrong. After my husband died, Michael changed. He became distant, cold. When he looked at me, it felt like he was measuring something, like he was deciding. One winter evening, he called and asked me to stay with him for a few days. You shouldn't be alone anymore, he said. Concern can be a disguise. When I arrived, his house felt empty in a way I can't explain. No family photos. No warmth. Just silence hanging heavy in the air. I asked where his wife was. She left, he said quickly. Tokwi. Later that night, I stood near the door, ready to leave. That's when I heard it. Click. The lock turned. I laughed softly, trying to keep things light. Mikhail, unlock the door. He didn't answer. He turned around slowly, and for the first time in my life, I saw something unfamiliar in his eyes. Not anger. Sadness. Decision. Fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. You were never supposed to live this long, he said. The room spun. My legs felt weak. I asked him what he meant, but he didn't answer me, not really. He began accusing me of things that made no sense. Secrets I had never kept. Crimes I had never committed. Then he said the words that changed everything. Dad told me the truth before he died. My heart stopped. A child doesn't turn against his mother without poison in his ears. He said my husband confessed. Everything said I was responsible for ruining lives, stealing futures, destroying a man who deserved to live. Michael spoke with certainty, like a judge delivering a sentence. I realized in that moment that whatever my husband had told him, it wasn't the whole truth. I survived that night by chance. A neighbor heard raised voices and knocked. Michael opened the door smiling, calm, and told them I was confused, old, forgetful. I walked out alive, but something inside me stayed behind. Survival is not the same as safety. Because when I looked back at my son, I knew this wasn't over. My husband's final confession didn't just destroy my marriage. It turned my own child into my enemy. I will tell you what my husband confessed on his deathbed, and why He waited 40 years to finally speak. Some truths are so heavy that people carry them for a lifetime and only drop them when it's too late to escape the damage. My husband waited until his last breath to tell the truth, and by then it had already poisoned our son. Thomas had been sick for months. Doctors said his heart was failing. But I knew something else was breaking inside him. Guilt has a way of eating at a man quietly. The night he called me into his room, the house felt colder than usual. He asked me to sit beside him. His voice was weak, but his grip on my wrists was tight, desperate. A man doesn't hold on like that unless he's afraid of what he's about to say. "I need to tell you something before I go," he whispered. I thought he was going to apologize for the years of emotional distance, the silences, the way he avoided certain questions. I was not prepared for what came next. He told me Michael was not his biological son. For a moment, I felt shock, then confusion, then a strange wave of relief that made me feel ashamed. But that feeling vanished when Thomas continued speaking. Relief is dangerous when it comes before the truth. He confessed that years ago, before Michael was born, he had an affair. Not a mistake. Not a moment of weakness. A hidden relationship that lasted long enough to destroy lives. The child that woman carried was not his. He said he knew who the real father was. And instead of stepping aside, Thomas did something unforgivable. Some men don't steal money, they steal futures. He admitted that he manipulated records, pressured people, and used his reputation to make the real father disappear from Michael's life. When I asked where that man was, Thomas looked away. "He's gone," he said. That was the moment I understood. Gone didn't mean left. I stood up, shaking. I demanded to know why he was telling me this now after decades of lies. His answer chilled me. "Because Michael deserves to know," he said. "But I can't let him hate me." Truth, twisted in fear, becomes a weapon. Thomas confessed that he had already told Michael, but not the real story. He told him that I had known everything, that I had agreed, that I was the one who pushed for the lie. I screamed. I told him he was destroying our son. Tears streamed down his face as he said, "He'll forgive me, but he'll never forgive you." Hours later, Thomas died, and with him, the chance to stop the lie. Some deaths don't end pain, they release it. When Michael came to see me after the funeral, his eyes were cold, distant. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't cry. He only said one thing. "I know what you did." That was the reality then. It had been reshaped into something dangerous. But my husband didn't tell Michael everything. There was one truth he took to the grave. A truth about who Michael's real father was. I will reveal the man my husband erased from history. And why his name was never meant to be spoken again. Some people aren't erased by time. They're erased by design. My husband didn't just lie about my son's past. He buried a man so completely that even his name was meant to disappear. After Thomas died, I began to understand why he was always uneasy whenever the past came up. Certain streets he avoided. Certain names he never spoke. I had mistaken it for pride. It was fear. Fear doesn't fade with age, it learns how to hide. I went searching for the truth quietly. I knew if Michael found out I was asking questions, he would shut me out completely. So I started where secrets usually sleep-hold records. Forgotten boxes. People who were no longer invited to church dinners. That's when I found the name, Elias Carter. The moment I read it, something inside me tightened. Not recognition warning. The name appeared in an old factory ledger, crossed out in thick ink, as if someone wanted to be sure it would never be read again. Names don't get crossed out by accident. Elias was a musician, a jazz pianist who played at small clubs on the edge of town. People said he was gentle, gifted, and deeply in love with a woman who vanished around the same time he did. Woman was Michael's mother. Thomas had told me she left town suddenly. That was another lie. When two people disappear at once, it's never coincidence. I tracked down an old neighbor who remembered Elias. She whispered when she spoke, even after all these years. He talked too much, she said, about fairness, about truth. She told me Elias had gone to Thomas once, confronted him, threatened to expose what he had done, how he used his influence to claim a child that wasn't his. A week later, Elias was gone. No goodbye. Nobody. No investigation. Some disappearances are labeled accidents to keep powerful people comfortable. I realized then that my husband hadn't just stolen a child. He had erased a father. When I tried to tell Michael, he wouldn't listen. He accused me of inventing stories to protect myself. You're lying, he said. Dad told me everything. I looked at my son and saw the damage clearly for the first time, not anger. But confusion hardened into hatred. A lie becomes strongest when it gives someone a target. I went back to my old house, the one Thomas, and I lived in for decades. I felt drawn there, as if something unfinished was calling me back. While cleaning out the attic, I noticed a section of the wall that had been repaired differently than the rest. Poorly, hastily, I pressed against it. It sounded hollow. The past always leaves a weak spot. I didn't know it yet. But what was hidden behind that wall had the power to destroy the lie completely, or get me killed, because my husband hadn't destroyed everything. He had hidden proof. Behind that wall was evidence meant to stay buried. I will tell you what we found hidden inside the house, and why someone was desperate to make sure it never came to light. Some walls are meant to protect. Some walls are meant to hide murder, lies, and betrayal. And the one in my attic was hiding everything. I had pressed against that patch of wall dozens of times. But today it felt different, alive, almost warning me to stop. My hands shook as I traced the uneven surface. Finally, I found a loose panel and pulled it gently. Behind it was a box. Some secrets are too heavy to be left in plain sight. The box was old, wooden, dust-covered, but locked. Not with a key, but with a small combination lock. My heart raced. This wasn't just old family memorabilia. This was evidence. Proof of everything Thomas had tried to bury the truth about Elias, my husband, and the stolen child. I didn't know what I expected. Papers, photographs, maybe a diary. But the contents were far worse than I could imagine. Inside, there were letters, court documents, and old photographs. And then, a small, leather-bound journal. I opened it. Some journals scream louder than any courtroom testimony. Elias had written every detail. His love for Michael's mother. His confrontation with Thomas. His fear. And then the threats he had received. One entry chilled me to the bone. If I disappear, let the truth be found. Not for me, but for the child who deserves to know who he really is. I realized then that Thomas hadn't just lied to the world, he had stolen a child. It is covered it all with layers of manipulation, so tight that even I had believed the story at first. Some lies are polished so well, even the innocent are fooled. I felt the weight of the box in my arms as I sat down on the floor. Every piece of paper, every photograph, every letter was a weapon. And I knew someone would kill to keep them hidden. A sudden sound behind me made me freeze. Footsteps, slow, careful. When secrets are uncovered, danger always follows. I ducked behind an old chair, barely daring to breathe. The door creaked open. It was Michael. "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low. His eyes were full of confusion, but also fear. "Michael, you have to see this," I whispered. He shook his head. "Mom, you don't understand. You're digging into things that can ruin us." "Everything Dad said, it's true." I swallowed hard. "No, it's not. Everything he told you is a lie. And this box proves it. Sometimes the people you trust most are the ones keeping you in the dark." I slid the box toward him. Michael hesitated. He touched it then. That's impossible," he muttered. "I wish it were," I said. A crash from the attic stairs made us both jump. Someone else was in the house. Someone who didn't want these secrets revealed. And at that moment, I realized the danger wasn't just about uncovering the past, it was about surviving the present before I could even move the box to safety. A shadow appeared in the doorway. Fire doesn't erase the truth. It only shows who's desperate to destroy it. And that night, the flames were not an accident. The shadow in the doorway didn't speak at first. It stood there, silent, breathing slowly, as if listening to our fear. Michael stepped in front of me instinctively. Though only hours earlier, he had looked at me like an enemy. Fear has a way of rearranging loyalties. "Who's there?" Mikhail demanded. The shadow retreated. Footsteps rushed down the stairs. By the time we reached the front door, the night was empty to empty. No car, no sound. Just cold air and the feeling that something had already been set in motion. I didn't sleep that night. When danger leaves quietly, it plans to return loudly. The next morning, I packed the box letters, journal, documents into an old suitcase. I planned to take it to a lawyer, then to the police. I knew once those papers were copied, the truth could never be buried again. Michael watched me silently. "I don't know what to believe anymore," he said finally. That was the first crack. A lie begins to die the moment doubt enters. That evening, I stepped outside to check the mailbox. The smell hit me before I saw anything. Smoke. I turned, and my heart dropped. Flames licked the side of the house, climbing fast, hungry, deliberate. Someone had soaked the porch with fuel. Someone had waited. Accidents don't spread with purpose. Michael dragged me away as the fire roared. Neighbors screamed. Sirens wailed. By the time firefighters arrived, the attic was gone. The box was gone. Everything Elias had risked his life to preserve ashes. I collapsed on the curb, shaking, staring at the smoke rising into the dark sky. Miser, he's Fasipali. No, he whispered. No. This can't be real. When truth burns, reality finally hits. The fire inspector called it an electrical issue. Old wiring. Unfortunate timing. I laughed a hollow, broken sound. Michael didn't laugh. He knew. That night, he sat beside me in silence. Hours passed before he spoke. Dad lied to me, he said. Those words didn't bring relief. They brought grief. Truth doesn't heal instantly, it cuts first. But then something else happened. A woman approached us as we stood near the ruins. Oh, they're dummy. Ice sharp. Watching Michael with a mixture of pain and recognition. You look just like him, she said softly. Michael turned. Like who? She didn't answer right away. She handed me a folded piece of paper and address. A name. He was your father, she said to Michael. And he didn't die by accident. The truth survived the fire. In human form. Before I could ask her anything, she walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Michael stared at the paper, hands shaking. The fire destroyed the evidence. But it summoned a witness who had been silent for decades. Some witnesses don't come forward because they're afraid. They stay silent because they're waiting for the right moment. And she had waited 40 years. Michael didn't sleep that night. Neither did I. The folded paper lay on the table between us, like a ticking clock. At dawn, without a word, we got into the car and drove to the address she had written. Some journeys aren't about distance, they're about courage. The house was small, tucked at the edge of town, surrounded by overgrown trees. It looked forgotten, like a place people avoided. When the door opened, the woman from the fire stood there. She nodded, as if she had known we would come. My name is Ruth, she said. I was his wife. Michael's breath caught. Elias. Sped. She stepped aside and let us in. When the truth finally enters a room, it changes the air. The waltz Elias at piano. Elias laughing. Elias holding a baby that was unmistakably Michael. My son stared at the pictures, his knees weak. Ruth told us everything. How Elias had loved Michael's mother. How Thomas used his influence to claim the child. How Elias fought back not with violence, but with truth. Truth threatens power more than anger ever could. When Elias threatened to go public, his car was forced off the road one night. The case was ruled an accident. No investigation. No justiça. Ruth survived by staying quiet. They told me if I spoke, she said, you would never be safe. Michael covered his face, sobbing. Some tears carry generations of pain. Ruth explained why she waited until now. She had been watching, waiting for Thomas to die, waiting for the lies to collapse on their own. And the fire, she said softly, was someone trying to finish what Thomas started. Michael looked at me then, not with hatred, not with anger, but with regret. I almost hurt you, he said, because of a lie. I took his hand. You were hurt first, I said. Understanding doesn't erase damage, but it opens the door to healing. Ruth handed Michael a small envelope. Inside was a copy of Elias's final letter, one she had hidden for decades. If my son ever reads this, know that I loved you before I ever held you. Michael broke down completely. But Ruth's voice hardened as she spoke again. There's something else you need to know, she said. The man who set the fire. He's not finished. When truth surfaces, danger resurfaces with it. She told us there were others involved. People who had benefited from Thomas's silence. People who wanted the past to stay buried. We have to go to the police, Michael said. Ruth shook her head. Not yet. Because before justice could begin, Michael had to make a choice that would change everything. Redemption doesn't arrive quietly. It demands witnesses, courage, and my son had avoided both his entire life. Michael sat in silence for a long time after Ruth finished speaking. The room felt heavy, like the truth had weight. I watched him struggle, not as a grown man, but as a child whose foundation had finally collapsed. When lies fall apart, they don't crumble, they explode. I can't pretend anymore, he said finally. I blamed you. I almost destroyed you. And all this time, I was protecting the wrong man. His voice broke. I have to tell the truth. Ouchie loud. Healing doesn't begin with forgiveness, it begins with accountability. Ruth warned him. Once the truth became public, there would be consequences. Old names would resurface. Old loyalties would break. Some people would fight back. Michael nodded. I know. That afternoon, he contacted a lawyer and asked for protection before making a statement. For the first time, my son was no longer hiding behind anger. He was stepping into responsibility. Fear loses its power the moment you face it. 2 days later, Michael stood in front of the police, the fire marshal, and a room full of quiet disbelief. His hands trembled, but his voice stayed steady. My father lied, he said, and I believed him. He confessed everything: the fire, the confrontation, the threats. He admitted he had known more than he told. Investigators and stayed silent to protect his family name. Silence can be a crime when truth is burning. When they asked why he came forward now, Michael looked straight at me. Because my mother almost paid for a lie with her life. That was the moment I broke down. The story spread quickly. Old rumors resurfaced. Elias's name was spoken again, this time with respect. People who once praised my husband began asking questions. The truth doesn't whisper forever. Eventually, it shouts. Michael turned himself in for obstruction and admitted his role in covering up the fire. The sentence wasn't decided yet, but he didn't ask for mercy. That night, he came to see me before being taken into custody. I don't expect forgiveness, he said, kneeling in front of me. But I needed you to know I see you now. Some apologies arrive late, but they still matter. I placed my hand on his head. I forgive you, I said. Not because it erases the past, but because I won't let it poison the future. Michael cried like a child, and for the first time since his father's death. But redemption never closes a story neatly, because while Michael chose the truth, others chose fear. The investigation had just begun. If you're listening to this story, don't protect a lie to keep a family together, because lies don't protect families. They rot them from the inside. The house where I spent most of my life is gone now. Ashes scattered by the wind, carrying secrets that once felt heavier than stone. I stood where the front door used to be and realized something, painful and freeing at the same time. Loss doesn't always mean defeat. Michael faced the consequences of his silence. The sentence was not light, but it was fair. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. For the first time in his life, he chose accountability over comfort. We wrote letters while he was away. Long ones, honest ones. In them, we spoke about things we had avoided for decades: fear, love, resentment, and forgiveness. Some conversations can only happen after the truth comes out. Ruth testified when the case was reopened. Elias's name was officially cleared. Records were corrected. Lies that had lived quietly in files and memories were finally replaced with truth. Justice came late, but it came. One afternoon, Michael said something that stayed with me. "I didn't know who I was," he said. "And when Dad gave me a story, even a false one, I clung to it. Because identity matters. People accept lies when they're desperate to belong. I forgave my husband not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. Carrying anger would only extend the damage he caused." Michael came home a changed man, quieter, gentler. He visited Elias's grave and left flowers without telling anyone. Healing doesn't announce itself, it shows up in small acts. Now, I live simply. I drink my tea by the window. I speak less, but I speak honestly. And when people ask why I tell this story publicly, I give them the same answer every time. Because silence is expensive. It costs generations. A secret doesn't die. With the people who keep it, it lives in the children. If you are listening and carrying a truth you're afraid to tell, understand this: the truth will come out eventually. And the longer it waits, the more damage it does on its way out. This is not just my story. It is a warning. If the story moved you, share it. If it reminded you of someone, speak to them. And if you're protecting a lie, ask yourself who you're really protecting. Because truth hurts once. Lies hurt forever. And don't forget to subscribe for more true family stories.